Welcome back, everyone. This is the MMA Outsiders. This is a mini-sode, a UFC 317 recap recording. My name is Zain Bando. He's Anthony Balester. Thanks again for tuning in. This is not going to be a traditional episode as we have a bunch of recapping to do from this past weekend. But before we do that, please be sure to like and subscribe to the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. You can do so youtube.com/EDB Network. And of course, you can check out all of our other content over on Playback, as the MMA Outsiders is presented by Playback. And you can listen to the MMA Outsiders wherever you get your podcasts. Our socials are scrolling across the bottom. If you need a reminder as to who we are, my name is Zain Bando. I'm a staff writer over at MMA Knockout. And of course, here's Anthony Balester. He's the ETB Sports Podcast Network podcaster as well. And Anthony, how was your weekend?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, couldn't have asked for a better card. In my opinion, I think this was the best UFC card we've had all year, and I can't wait to break it down.
Yeah, I can't wait to break it down. Well, it should be really, really fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to just talking about how the future of some of these fights transpires moving forward here. So let's get into it now. Let's start off with UFC 317. We had a banner ending to the card as we had Ilia Topuria knocking out Charles Oliveira in a now viral video. It's been viewed over 5 million times. Anthony, what were your initial thoughts on this fight? Were you surprised as to how Oliveira was knocked out? And what do you think it means for Topuria's star power as he becomes yet another champion to win 2 belts in 2 different divisions?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised at all. I mean, exactly the way this fight went was exactly how I saw it happening. You know, I said Charles Oliveira likes to come forward. He's not a really good fighter that likes to go backwards. And because of that, he falls right into Ilia Topuria's trap. So I pretty much predicted that Ilia was going to knock him out at some point in this fight. I thought it was going to be early second round. So I guess the one thing I didn't predict was Ilia to do it so soon. He did it in the first couple minutes of the fight. But yeah, you're right, Zen. I think where this puts Ilia Topuria, it definitely puts him in the conversation with Islam as the current best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. And I think right now, with where we stand, out of the active fighters who's currently in the UFC still fighting, I think he's got to be the biggest star in UFC and probably in MMA. And I said before, if he pulled this off, this is probably undoubtedly the greatest 3-run stretch of any fighter that we've ever seen. I mean, for him to knock out Volkanovski, knock out Max Holloway, and knock out Charles Oliveira, we're talking about 3 Hall of Famers that are all within the top 15 of the pound for pounds. I mean, legends at that. Guys that, maybe a little older, but when they fought other guys, they were pretty much flawless in those other matchups. So, yeah, they're older, but these guys are still in the prime of their careers, and Ilia disposed of them all pretty easily. And it seems like he's getting better and better with each one of his fights. I just think this guy looks to be unbeatable, and I know they had the little argument between him and Patty in the middle of the octagon. I think that fight would definitely sell. Both those guys have a lot of animosity against each other, but I really don't think that's the fight to make. I mean, it's good for the fans and for the casuals, but I feel like there's 2 other guys that are much more deserving. I mean, I'd like to see him in there against a Justin Gaethje or even an Arman Tsarukyan. I think those guys are much more deserving. But either way, I don't see any of these guys at 155 or anybody coming up from 145 to challenge Ilia. And ultimately, I think the only guy that could possibly stop Ilia right now is Islam, but he moved up to 170. So we might have to wait on that for a little while. But what are your thoughts there on the fight?
Yeah, so before we get into the fight itself, I don't know if you saw from the time that we're recording this earlier today, a small video clip was released and Duplessis essentially leaked that there's a possibility that Justin Gaethje could actually be fighting Paddy Pimblett at UFC 319 in Chicago. If that were to come to fruition, Anthony, what are your early thoughts on that? And then I'll give you my thoughts on the fight, because if Justin Gaethje fights Paddy Pimblett, I think there's fireworks and then some. And the UFC needed a banger co-main event for Chicago before Duplessis fights Chimaev. Do you think that fits the bill? Because I do.
Yeah, that's the direction the UFC goes, and I would love to do that. I mean, if Paddy is the guy for Ilia, I think he does need another signature to win. Yeah, Michael Chandler is a ranked fighter, but he's not really a title contender, top 5 guy. If you go out there and beat a guy like Justin Gaethje, then there's no question that, Paddy Pimblett deserves it. And Justin Gaethje, with the power he has, how he can just knock people out, I think that's a really, really good test for him. And with Justin Gaethje coming off that win against Faziev, I think both those guys, probably could deserve one more, number one contenders match. I think that fight would honestly give us fireworks. And one last thing I'll say about Ilya before we go back to you is, yeah, no one's going to ever be bigger than Conor. He's anomaly in terms of fame and what he did and how global he was. No one's going to ever surpass that. He was the first one to do it and make the sport global. So Ilya would never pass him in terms of fame. But in terms of talent and how skillful and how great they are, there's no comparison. Ilya Topuria is head and shoulders much more talented and much better than Conor McGregor ever was.
Yeah, I would agree. And one of them defended their belts, while the other one didn't. I think that that's very interesting in itself. And I also think what's it? I think too, at the same time, I think another thing that sets Ilya apart is his global appeal. I mean, he's got a huge Instagram following now. Um, I mean, he's got so much momentum riding on him that I don't even think it's comparable to McGregor in some ways. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I know McGregor was so confident saying, oh, I'm going to knock this guy and knock this guy out. But there's just this like poise and calmness of Ilya in all his fights. I mean, you see when he's doing his walkouts, he's laughing, he's singing the music. He looks like he couldn't be more calmer in the octagon. And then you look at Charles. I mean, Charles looks, to be a little tight and to be a little nervous. And it almost seems like Ilya puts so much work in and has these things figured out so much that he already knows how the fight's going to end before it even takes place. I mean, the confidence and poise that this guy shows, I mean, telling Charles Oliveira, hey, I respect you. I'm sorry it has to be you. But, I mean, the guy backs up everything he says. So I think that there's nothing that you can hate on Ilya Topuria. I know he's still the villain, but I think eventually he's going to start being the one that gets the cheers and not the boos at these arenas.
Yeah, I'm surprised he doesn't have a bigger fan base already. Yeah, it's definitely very interesting. What do you think just overall on just overall on just his star power and success? And do you think he has the capability to headline a card in Spain? Because I personally do. What do you
Oh
think?
yeah, I think he could headline any card, and I think right now, especially now that Alex Pereira is no longer a champion, I mean this guy has got to be the headline for any card he's going to be in. I think he's the face of the UFC right now, and with how big he's going to be in Spain, I know Dana White's trying really hard. I know there's a lot of difficult things he's got to navigate, but man, if we ever get Ilya Topuria headlining the card in his home country of Spain, I know he's also got the Georgian connection as well. But man, any card that this guy's going to be on, he's got to be headlining. And I really think right now he's the biggest star in the UFC. And I don't think there's any question about it.
Interesting. Yeah, I would agree with that as well. And I also just think too that he has that global appeal to where anybody can watch him fight, and I think people would be impressed. What do you think?
I agree because, you got guys who, sell tickets because of what they say in press conferences and how they, kind of sell themselves. But not only does Ilya do that, it's the way he fights. I mean, he's a very exciting fighter that because of his KO power and how he's beating these legends, I think anybody gets excited to see that. I know Islam, as dominant he is, or some of these other Dagestani wrestlers, yeah, they may be dominant, yeah, they may be unbeatable, but sometimes they're not always exciting. I mean, as much as, an MMA fan as we are, we'd rather see a guy get TKO'd instead of seeing two guys wrestle each other for 25 minutes. So I think because of the style he fights with, I think that also makes his appeal that much better.
Yeah, I agree. And do you think this is a home run hit to potentially open Taporia to begin the 2026 UFC schedule? Because I don't know how you can top that personally. And if Netflix executives were watching that and the UFC ends up going with them, I think given that John Jones is no longer a part of the picture, I think you have to open. If they go to Netflix, you have to open that schedule with Taporia. Do you not?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think now when they're negotiating their TV deals, and whoever they do decide to go with, Topuria's got to be the main guy, the main headliner. And like you said, whatever's going to be that first card, whether it's on Netflix or whatever, they're going to have to sell, and it's going to have to be a great card. And that's the perfect guy to get in there. I know he does want to fight towards the end of the year, but I mean, if he wants to fight November, December, Dana White just might be like, hey, just hold off until January because we want that first card on Netflix or wherever to be a star-studded card. And he's the biggest star right now in MMA, I believe.
Yeah, I think so too. Oh man, I don't disagree. Let's move on to the co-main event now. Alexandre Pantoja defends his belt for the fifth time successfully, submitting Kai Kara France. He made this one look really easy. What did you think of the fight?
I was really surprised on this. I thought, Alexandre Pantoja at flyweight also looks unbeatable. And I, pretty much thought he'd probably win this fight either by decision or by submission, just like he did. But man, he just looked like a total dominance. Obviously, Kai Kara France, the KO artist, you really didn't give him much of a chance to compete on the ground, which when this did get to the ground, Pantoja really dismantled him. But man, what really surprised me was when they were on their feet, it seemed like Pantoja was winning those exchanges and was doing so well, with his strikes. And it just seems like this guy at 35 years old, being at the flyweight division, he seems like he's getting better and better in each fight. And now it's undoubtable this guy at the very minimum is the second greatest flyweight of all time. But now having the most wins at flyweight in UFC history and with this title reign, I mean, Zain, I think if he defends this belt a couple more times, maybe 3 or 4 more times, maybe even less, I feel like we start to have that discussion of is him or Demetrius Johnson the best at flyweight. I mean, he's making it basically undeniable, and he's absolutely right. He's been disrespected in the pound-for-pound rankings. I don't think there's any way you could keep this guy outside the top 5 pound-for-pound rankings going forward with how he looks to improve in each and every fight.
For sure. I think it's a perfect place to wrap that. Let's move on now to Joshua Van versus Brandon Royval. Fight of the year contender for sure. Joshua Van takes the fight on short notice, number 12 in the UFC flyweight rankings, clinches a title shot against Pantoja. They had the face-off in the octagon. I think flyweight's starting to get fun again, and Joshua Van has officially joined the party, and this was definitely a rough loss for Royval because he's been such a stud for years. But it's clear this kid at only 23 years old has a chance to be something special. What did you think? What did you think of the fight?
Man, this was definitely the fight of the year and maybe one of the best fights I've ever seen. I mean, practically this was a 50-50 fight that, I mean, until he got the knockdown on Royval at the end, I mean, you could have went either way with this. I know Joshua Van, I would say maybe didn't land as much, but he was more efficient with what he threw. Royval obviously threw a lot more punches, so he was going to land more. But I think Joshua Van was more efficient with his strikes, and I think he landed the more impactful strikes. But basically, this was just a 15-minute brawl of both guys in the middle of the octagon, just going blow for each other. And you thought at any second, with the way that these guys were getting hit, you thought one of these guys were going to fall and get TKO'd. And it almost happened at the end of the third round. But, man, you thought this would happen much sooner. I know Dana White and the UFC matchmakers got to be happy because one thing they desperately needed is new contenders in the flyweight. That's why we've seen guys like Steve Erceg and Kai Ascora kind of getting pushed to the title shot very quickly because they need new contenders because Pantoja just kind of, went through all these guys already, and there's not many names he hasn't beat already. So I'm glad that we get a fresh name. The guy's only 23 years old. The sky's the limit. I know in his one UFC loss, he was winning that fight until he got caught and got a little sloppy. So he's pretty much looked dominant in all his fights, and I can't wait to see with his striking ability. You always got to give him a puncher's chance to win the fight. Now, against anybody, against Pantoja, I'm going to have to side with Pantoja. And because Pantoja is so complete, I'm not sure if Van has the grappling ability to beat Pantoja. But win or lose, even if he loses, with him being so young, his potential being so high, he'll be fighting for the title again soon. So I can't wait to see this fight, and it's nice to get a fresh face for Pantoja.
Yeah, it's nice to get a fresh face for Pantoja for sure. And of course, this is obviously a huge feather in the cap for Van as well. Other UFC 317 reactions, not much more to say other than the fact that Gregory Rodriguez is a vicious knockout power. I don't think I've ever seen Jack Hermanson get knocked out like that before. And you want to talk about a statement and win after losing to Jared Cannonier? That's a pretty good one. What did you think of it?
Yeah, what a great response for a guy like Gregory Rodriguez. I mean, getting that KO over Jack Hermanson after losing to Jared Cannonier. I mean, we already knew Gregory Rodriguez is a really good fighter. And yeah, you know, Cannonier he lost to, but Cannonier, you know, he's pretty much a borderline top 5, you know, guaranteed top 10 guy. So he's one of the cream of the crops of the division. I think anybody else, I think Gregory Rodriguez could dismantle them. And I think Gregory Rodriguez now will get a top 15 ranked middleweight, get a chance to get ranked again. But, man, that was a vicious knockout. I mean, after he dropped him, getting that other shot after he was already cold. I know you got to keep fighting until the referee, you know, calls it. But, man, that was vicious. And then some other things that stood out was Peyton Talbot bounce back against Felipe Lima, who looked, you know, like he was a good upcoming prospect. And Talbot, you know, after not looking so good in his last matchup, really showed the improvements in such a short period of time. And then Delgado getting, you know, in my opinion, an upset KO win over Meal. That was really shocking. I mean, he looked, you know, really, really sharp as well. And then last thing I'll say, Jacoby Smith. I mean, he submitted Nico Price. And, you know, he looks like he's got insane potential as well. So I think this card from top to bottom was unbelievable. It was the best card so far, and it might end up finishing as the best card in 2025.
Yeah, I think it is an early candidate to be the number one card of 2025 for sure, and I don't think it's even close. Just very briefly, as we only have a couple more minutes left, and we want to make this as succinct as possible, we're going to go a little rapid fire early. Very, very quick reaction to Dana White discrediting John Jones's retirement claims that he was in fact retired last November, but the UFC doesn't think so. Well, what do you think? Is this gamesmanship, or is this something else?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on, Zain, with these guys. I mean, it's like a he said, she said thing. We don't know who to believe. I mean, I definitely don't think it's true that, you know, Dana White found out the night before he made the press conference. I definitely think he knew much sooner. But I think both these guys are lying a little bit, and we'll never know the truth. I think they tried to make the fight happen. John Jones said yeah, and then afterwards said no. But man, if you look at the tweets, I mean, John Jones has been saying since November he doesn't want to fight. So it makes you think like maybe John Jones didn't want to fight. He wanted to retire, and the UFC kind of prolonged it. But we'll never know. And I just think it's a bad look for Dana White and John Jones, the fact that this fight didn't happen, and both those guys are saying opposite things.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more I really need to add on to that, and I don't think we'll ever know the full story. And if we ever do, I think it'll be a pretty shocking reveal. Very, very quick on this. I think Sean Strickland is just being Sean Strickland. He's a wild man, and he's going to pay the price for it. And he probably won't end up fighting in Nevada anytime soon. What do you think?
Yeah, Dana White probably wasn't too happy about that, and you probably won't be seeing him ringside anytime soon. And thank God
No.
Chris Curtis was there, because it looked like he saved that fighter from Sean Strickland wanting to kill him. So it was pretty funny. You know, nothing that Sean Strickland does is surprising. The guy's an animal. The guy's willing to throw down whenever you want to throw down. You got to give him that. He's got heart and he's got charisma. But sometimes it gets the best of him. But it was pretty funny to see. And there'll probably be some repercussions for it.
Yeah, there's probably going to be some repercussions for sure, and it'll be interesting to see what was ended up being. But until then, that remains to be seen. Very, very quick, just a few more topics left. Jake Paul beats Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Has no preferences as to who he wants to fight next. It's really quick. Can we credit Jake Paul as a legitimate boxer, or do you think he's still a fraud? What do you think?
Well, I definitely think he's a legit boxer. I mean, you could tell by the way he strikes and his movements. He's definitely a pro-level boxer. Now, is he a title contender boxer that can compete with the Canelo Alvarez's or the no names that we have are in their prime? I don't think so. I mean, you've seen when he went up against another pro boxer and Tommy Fury, he didn't do too well. But when he fights these older guys who, you know, are pro boxers, but maybe not in their prime, not the same fighters, he does do pretty well. I'll be honest, I didn't see this fight live. I was too busy watching the better card in UFC. But I tried to watch the highlights, and it wasn't a really exciting fight. I know Julio Chavez Jr. Has some shots early on, but I do got to give Jake Paul credit. He is beating guys who are pro-level boxers, and I do think just as a pro level, he's definitely there. But he's not no title contender or no rank, no top 5 in any weight class fighter. And I think if you ever look at these guys like a Devin Haney or a Canelo Alvarez, I think he'll get dismantled. But if he keeps getting these money fights and keeps making money, I mean, people are going to continue to tune in.
100%. And then lastly, We had the PFL 7 semifinals, 3 different divisions: heavyweight, light heavyweight, and middleweight. All decided. All the finals are now set for August. Way too early impressions is that I think Fabian Edwards is the best finalist out of all of the different divisions. And I honestly, I'm just going to be honest. I was there. I didn't think the PFL card was very good, and I'm hoping that the finals are better. And that's really all I can say about that. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm hoping that we get a better finals. I know the semifinals was a little lackluster, but Fabian Edwards, I agree, looks like to be one of the best fighters in the PFL. He looked really, really sharp against Sylvia. You were right, Zach. I gotta give you credit. You picked Sergio Petz to beat Stotts. I was wrong on that. You were absolutely all over that. And then last thing I'll say is Sullivan Coley, up and comer, beating the veteran Phil Davis. Something that I didn't predict. But man, it seems like we got a new up and comer that we need to watch in the PFL.
Yeah, for sure. And that's going to do it for this post fight show. Thanks again for tuning in. My name is Zain Bando. He's Anthony Balester. And just as a quick reminder that you can get the MMA Outsiders wherever you get your podcast: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Acast, and so much more. We'll be back with regular episodes starting next week where we'll preview UFC Nashville and so much more across the combat sports landscape. But until then, have a great 4th of July, and we will see you guys soon. Have a good one.
See ya.